Now let's look at the reports. We'll start by looking at the annual report. We simply enter the year for which we want the report, then usually we'll be asked for a password. So if you're the business owner, you'll have the password and you can run the report so you can see the full profit and loss and everything for your business. If you are the office assistant, you may not have the password and you can talk to the business owner about getting the password for the access for all of those reports. But anyway, it allows you as the business owner to have a little different level of access for reporting. So we'll enter that. All right, and very quickly in this case, our business report came up. But first I want to show you this little warning here. I have a client that has more than 10 years of data in the system. So their client management solution takes about 23 seconds to run this report, which in real time isn't very long. Less than 30 seconds, you got a full report. That's awesome. In computer time, that seems like ages. And in fact, you might wonder, is something broken? And this report does quite a lot of math. So if you're seeing roughly 100 people a week for 10 years, that's hundreds of thousands of records. And then this report goes and runs reports on all of those. So for most of you, this will run in a couple of seconds just like this because there's not that much information and you probably have a newer system. But if you have a very old computer, this might take a moment to run. Don't worry, it's just running all those calculations. So let's look at each of these sections. There's 3 sections across the top here. This first section is all about dollars. So it's the 2016 dollars received. Now again, this is just sample data that people have been playing around with in the trial. So it's not representative of anybody's business. But in this, we have $2,685 listed as received in 2016. In 2015, we collected $3,672. There's a difference, the $988. That represents a 27% change from the previous year. Pretty simple. Now, we can also get this at the category level or the item level. So we can see everything for our business. What did we do in total versus adjustments versus other bodywork versus whatever else you might do, classes or merchandise. So first section, just dollars. Second section is services. In this, we'll notice that there were 39 total services offered this year versus 71 last year. And again, we see the variance and the variance as a percent. Now, the services have a particular math that doesn't add up, and it doesn't add up perfectly. So let's have a look at what I mean. We did 24 adjustments for an adult, and we did 1 adjustment at a package rate, a discounted $40 rate adjustment, one of those. That adds up to 25. Great. But then you'll notice that there's another 3 items down here that we're selling 3 packages. These are financial transactions. They're not services. So if I added 24 and 1, that's 25, and 3, that should take us to 28. But these aren't services. These are just financial transactions. Now, I'll remind you that we set that up when we were looking at how to update items. So remember back here when we were setting up our packages that our packages fit into the category of adjustment, but it's the only thing that we have here that does not count as a service. So that allows us to then have a really accurate dollars per service or dollars per adjustment. So if we come back over here, I have $1,700 collected in the adjustment category. Then I had 25 actual adjustments, not 28 transactions, but 25 of those were actually adjustments or services. That 1,700 divided by 25 is $68 per service. So this over here, the reminder, is where we choose whether or not to count something as a service. Most of the time we'll count it as a service. In the case of packages, we won't. Back to our report. So we've got dollars, then we have number of services, and then essentially we have dollars per service. And you can get the variance between the years and all of those over category, over each individual item. Down at the bottom of the report, then we have some grand totals. The total received was $2,685, which actually matches the number up top here. And the total expenses were $2,758. And again, if we ran an expense report, and I showed how to run expense reports when we looked at entering expenses, we would see that that would add up too. So apparently we've used some bad sample data because our profit is negative $73. But again, this is just, what people have been entering in the trial and playing around with. Not a problem. So we can look at then, how does that change from last year and all of that. Now, a quick note about total received in period. Occasionally, the total received in the period will not match the total number up here. So up here, everything is based around the services. So let's say, for example, somebody comes into your office in December, and on December 15th, you give them an amazing adjustment. And they are somebody that has insurance. Maybe you charge them a $15 copay, and they pay that then. And then in January, you receive the $35 that their insurance company pays you. Up top, both of those payments would show up in this number because we really want to get an accurate how many dollars am I earning per adjustment. However, or per service. However, tax-wise, if this were the year 2016 and we were looking at December 2016, we would only count the $15 copay because we didn't receive the additional $35 into the next year. So you can click on this and that will give you a walkthrough of that same example. And just a reminder, for taxes, we need the actual dollars received in the year. And so we always use the total received in period at the bottom. Over on the right then, we have the number of new clients. New clients are counted when a certain service is received. We define what will count as a new client in the services and products. Now in this case, in the model we're using here, somebody only gets an evaluation once. They might get a re-evaluation later, but the initial evaluation is the first time that we have that person as a new client. So they might come to a talk or something else might be in the system, but we don't count it as the first service until they get an evaluation. When a service of evaluation for adult, child, or senior is assigned to somebody, then that person gets counted as a new client. We show 5 new clients this year versus 3 new clients last year. Then we get the monthly average, and that's just this number divided by 12. So if we had 24 new clients, then we'd show a monthly average of 2. And then the PVA is the number of visits divided by the new clients. Occasionally, you will see question marks out here. And the reason for that is basic math. We cannot divide by 0. So let's come up here a little bit. We gave no adjustments to children in 2016, so we received $0. But last year we received 25. We gave one. No worries, the math here works out. 25 is our difference. Same when we start to count services. Well, we did 1 last year, we did 0 this year. But then when we try to get a dollars per service this year, or a growth, it doesn't make sense because mathematically we can't divide by 0. So whenever you get this question mark or a blank space, it just means there's not enough information to do that calculation. If we had 500 here and 400 here, all the math works out. So the annual service report will give you a profit, it'll give you total received and total expenses, and you can use that directly for your taxes. If you want expense details for your taxes by category, then again, you can run the annual expense report and it breaks everything down by category and compares to the previous year as well. At the bottom, you'll notice that it'll tell you when the report was run and it'll give you a page number. Now, it doesn't calculate page number until you actually print it. So if I were, say, to export this as a PDF just so you can see it, then notice that down at the bottom it says page 1 and page 2. But when you view the report on a screen, the page number doesn't make sense because it really just depends on how big your screen is. So this will get calculated when you export the report. Now let's look at the 3-month detail. We enter the first day of the month for the current month usually, and then it'll give us the current month and the 2 previous. Again, we'll be prompted for a password. And again, on this system, it ran very quickly. I have a computer that's 4 years old, but it's a pretty good computer. And there's not a ton of data. But again, if you have a very old computer or you're crunching through hundreds of thousands of records, it might take a moment. As we look at the 3-month report, it's a good time to show you why we should look at the report when nothing else is being entered in the system, or to simply export a PDF so that we can look at it later. Notice that when I begin to add a new service, that the report starts to pick up on that service and we end up with blank lines on the report. So generally, it's best to just run the reports when you're not entering other services, and then if you want to look at it later, simply export it to a PDF and access it there. This report is great at giving you a sense of how your business is running, not only in the last few months, but then how those last few months compare to the same months in the previous year. So we put in March 1st, so we get March, February, and January, in this case of 2016. So I can see my dollars per service, the number of services, and the dollars per adjustment, everything right here. And I can look at that versus the previous month or versus March in the previous year. So it gives me a great view of all of that. And again, it's all broken down by category and by item. At the bottom, we get the grand totals. So the total services in each period, the number of new clients in each period, the PVA for each period, the total received dollar-wise, and total expenses. Again, you may see some empty spaces in the report where we can't divide over 0. You might be inclined to, since this is a 3-month and therefore kind of quarterly report, to run your taxes from this report. So you would look at the total received in period, and you could do that. I could add these 3 numbers up, and then I would have my quarterly total for my taxes, and that would work just fine. However, there is one more business report that might make the quarterly reporting a little bit easier. So let's have a look at that one. The business by period report allows us to enter any period that we want. So if I want a quarterly report, I could just enter the first 3 months. 1/1 and 3/31. And then I won't need to do any math. It tells me the total payments by service and the total payments received in the period, and I can just use that $1,125 if that were my total for that period. There's some other nice things about this report. This report gives us the ability to look at details. So if I twirl down, then I see every single adjustment that I gave in the period for which the report is run. Now let's say that I notice some sort of data entry error. I notice, wow, I received $500 instead of $50 there, or something like that. I could simply tap the wrench, and that brings me exactly that service, and I can make whatever change, update that I need to in that service. So it works both as a great overview, or if you want to just double check some records, you can run the report and look through and just see if all the math looks right to you. In this case, we've only got a few things entered in the business by period, so let's run it for a longer period. So now we have a report that goes from January 1st to December 31st. And again, in this sample system, we don't have a ton of data, but we've got a little bit more to work with. So once again, I see all my category totals, I see all my item totals, and then if I twirl down, I can actually see each individual item. So there's the 1 consultation, there's the 24 adult adjustments, etc. I can go down further and look at the numbers for every single category that I have. And then at the bottom, I get a very nice breakdown of where I received the money. So apparently we made $190 in classes, we made $1,700 doing adjustments, and so this breaks down based on your categories. And again, at the bottom, we have our total services, the dollars per service, and then if we were doing this for a quarterly report, it's the total payments received in the period that we would use. And again, there's the little reminder there that gives you the difference between those two. So to review, the annual report allows you to look at a whole year and compare it to the previous year. The 3-month detail is actually 3 months of this year that you can look at how they compare to each other versus the same 3 months in the previous year and how they look at each other. And then there's the business by period, where you can actually get to the service level for each particular service, and you can also look at the earnings breakdown in a bar graph. When we looked at recording expenses, we looked also at the annual expense report and the expense by period. We've also looked at the recent client follow-up report, when we were looking at how to take cool actions to follow up with clients. So there's a couple more reports here that we'll have a quick look at. One is clients owing, and that simply finds everybody who owes money in the system. If I want to find out, well, why does Chris Tyne owe $5? Simply tap the little icon there, Chris Tyne's record's up, we see the $5. Quickly scanning the records shows that we charged him $50 for this service and we only received $45. If that's some sort of data entry error, we could just go to service maintenance and correct that. If it's not, then next time he has a service, we can just add $5 to that. Maybe he came into the lecture, there was no charge for that, of course, but maybe he also paid on that day. So I could put in $5 there, and then when we refresh his record, he's got nothing due. Looks like Frank Jensen said that he would pay us next time for one of his adjustments. And that must exactly be the case. Maybe he left his wallet in the car and he's going to catch us up next time. We charged him $50 and he hasn't paid us. Again, I could run an invoice for him and email it directly to him, and we looked at that when we were looking at the billing. But this is just a great way to get a quick look at the clients with the balances due. The clients with credit is obviously the reverse of that. So here you'll have a list mostly of people that have money left on their packages. This might be a good thing to look at if you haven't seen somebody in a while and say, oh, I haven't seen Christopher Lane in a while. Let's give him a call and make sure he comes back in. Again, a tap or a click brings up his record, and then we can call him directly. Now, the sales tax liability and the service tax liability, many of you won't use. We would define that again in the update items. When we update services and products, we would say whether sales or service tax should be recorded for this item. And in this case, we have, looks like massage listed as having a service tax and consultation as having a service tax. We have a sales tax listed for t-shirt and a Tai Chi DVD. To get at the tax rate, then we would update the tax rates. So this is where we would define those tax rates. Let's look at a record where tax has been applied. And we have a few of them. So in this case, we sold a Tai Chi DVD and the tax was automatically calculated. We look at the next one, a t-shirt was sold. The massage, and all of that is automatically entered. If I were to choose a different service, we'll just change this around. We'll change that to an adult adjustment. Notice the tax just went away and it defaulted to the price for an adjustment. If I go back to massage, notice the $80 comes back and the tax comes back, and so now we're charging them $82.40 again. So all that's automatically calculated once you do that initial configuration. Should I charge tax on this item? What is the tax rate for my area? So when I run the sales tax liability report, we can enter a start and end range, and again, you might be doing this quarterly. So I put in a broad range of dates just to make sure I found all the things that had sales tax collected. So this report shows me that I've collected $4.80 of taxes for sales tax for that period. And then I could use that, obviously, to pay my taxes. Finally, the service tax liability is very similar. Again, we'll enter a broad date range, and here we have it. So it shows us the $1.80 for the evaluations and the $2.40 for body work. And just as with the other one, I can look at simply the categories and how much I owe for each, or the detail, and see the grand total right here. So if your state does require service tax or does require sales tax, you can also track that within the system and then run this report for whatever period you need. So that takes care of all of the reports.